Hi everybody, welcome to The Hard Truth Inside the Football Industry podcast with me, Philip Ideson, and Darragh MacAnthony, Chairman, El Presidente, co-owner of Peterborough United.
Chief bottle washer.
Yeah, everything. How are you doing, Darragh?
Oh, good, pal. Oh, good. Good to see you. Mondays usually I call it like the shit day. All the shit news comes out on Monday and hammers you and whatever else. Do you know what I mean? So now I'm good today. I'm sure you are. From a football perspective, I'm sure you're on cloud nine.
Yeah.
You know, Bradford fans like mill our ratings all the way up with all those like record viewings and listeners and go up the charts to number 4.
Yeah, I've been telling you, making a case for more Bradford City talk, I think.
Yeah, you want the hard truth to become the Bradford Hard Truth podcast. Not going to happen. Yeah, and obviously Bradford's form continuing. I see our friend, our CEO pal, decided to take my advice and tie it to
Exactly. Yeah, this morning they were given the jobs for 18 months.
What did I say to him in the episode the other day, Philip?
Someone will poach them if you don't tie them up.
I said, let me tell you right now, pal, get them tied down.
Mm. Yeah, and we had best win of the season away at Cheltenham, which is just a hard place for us to go. It's one of those bogey teams that we never seem to do well because they're usually a pretty good team.
Brilliant.
And so it was a great result, and they deserve it.
What's the points to playoffs? How far off are you?
We're 7 points off the playoff with one in hand over most of the playoff teams.
Ooh, I smell optimism creeping in.
Yeah, especially now that Wembley looks like it might be open in May.
Ooh, listen, Bradford would bring 40,000 to Wembley, not that in my mind. That's for sure. I mean, I smell optimism from your side. I mean, 3 months ago it was suicide. Now it's optimism.
Well, and as we've been going on this run, I've kind of laughed at talk of the playoffs because, I'd rather just be safe.
Phil, fan, straight away you just said 7 points. You didn't even have to look it up. That tells me, like a true bullshitter fan who's like, oh, I'm just worried about relegation. You've already had one eye on the playoffs. Last 2-3 results.
It's fair to say I've been doing some math, looking at the league table.
I don't look at tables. Can you believe that?
I don't believe that, actually.
I don't, because I always got to the point, like the last few years, so much shit's happened to us. Like 3 years ago, final day of the season, we were going to be in if Toney lost to Coventry. They didn't. We missed out. We finished 7th. Things that have happened last minute to us last year with COVID. I get to the point now, people get so upset in September, October, November. And I always say to them, like, it's not relevant, really. Yes, you don't want to be at the bottom of the league, but the real time to not table watch, but focus on where you are is kind of the last 4 or 5 games of the season. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's actually when the final whistle goes in the season. Where are you? Look, the players, the manager, I'm sure they all do. I'm sure fans are dreaming. They're all thinking, oh, we're up there. I think we're 3rd, 4th at the moment. 3rd.
I think you're 2nd.
Oh, okay, right. So, as example, there you go. So, fans going, oh my God, this is it, and this is the time. Then you lose a game of football, and it's like we're the worst team in the world. And that's why I'm like at a point where, look, the way I look at it is you always say 2 points a game, right? So, if you can average 2 points a game and you can win at home and draw away, and that's the perfect science usually to have a good promotion campaign, great, see where it takes you. But particularly this year in COVID, because of the amount of games everyone has to play, because of the lack of squad sizes, because of the not having fans, it's such a bizarre year for football, and you're seeing it in the Premier League and some of the teams competing up there. So it's just bizarre. You look at results and you hear I don't even look at results, but I hear people tweet me and go, oh, such and such lost, or Portsmouth lost, or Burton beat Hull, and I'm like, I'm not surprised. It really is the year of bizarreness. So for me, we put together a squad. You've confidence in your staff. The players, the staff are all united and wanting to put the rights of, put things right, what happened last year. And then you leave them to it and you give them the best you can give them, whatever they need. They need a night away at Plymouth in a hotel tonight. No problem. I'll pay the $3,000. They need an extra hand. They need whatever. No problems. We'll do what we got to do as long as they give us in return hard work.
Yeah.
And I can never fault my players and my staff if they work hard. If they train hard, they work hard, great. The only time you'll hear me moan is when we're abject shite and don't try hard. And you can accuse them sometimes of throwing in a stinker. And if they can get that out of their system, great. But the one thing I'll say is, me, my partners, everyone, it's probably the first time in years I've been this, not comfortable, but really, really low maintenance with management and coaching that, I feel we've done the best we can and now it's up to them. And you get to the end of the season and see where that takes you. That's all you can do.
Yeah. Oh, it helps when results go your way, and there's nothing for you to get involved in particularly. I mean, you get the occasional one here and there, and you get a bad half and you have half the world on you on Twitter for
Yes.
45 minutes. And then you turn it around in the second half. And
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And we've done that. And we've, recently we haven't been, coming out of the blocks great, but that hasn't been a regular thing. Fans are going, oh, second half, team, whatever. We've been pretty good in first halves. I study, obviously, data on metrics of how we're performing games. And funny enough, it's actually the second half, so we haven't been great in the first 15 minutes. So we analysed that about 6 weeks ago. Me and the manager, I sat down on a Sunday, did a Zoom call with him and went through 45th to the 60th minute. I don't know what team talks you're giving, but they fucking stink because we're teams for after half time. And he was kind of a bit stunned by that, but he took it in good spirit. And I remember being at the games, at the home games, seeing him just after half time. Don't forget what to say, the first 15 minutes. He goes, don't worry, I fucking told them. I've told them they're in training tomorrow if they don't come out like on fire in the second half. So I don't know, football's weird when you start looking at data like that. So all I know is that I think there's still 18 games or 17 games to go. It's going to be a battle of attrition for both Bradford and us because we've got a lot of games. And it's going to be the way it is. Everyone was excited today about, we're going to have some fans at the end of the season. Yeah, I think when the season's over, I think when
you're hoping not to need that. I'm hoping that we get the chance to see some player football.
Yeah, I get that. I understand. And knowing the Bradford faithful, there'll be a lot of people there. And you have good success rate in the playoffs. Look, no one wants to be in the playoffs. Barry Fry once said to me, the only way you want to win promotion via the playoffs is if you're guaranteed, because it's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
He said, forget about coming second, forget about going up. The best way to go up is actually winning via the playoffs in Wembley. And he's absolutely right. If you can guarantee it, you would take it all day long, wouldn't you, versus finishing second or whatever else. So there's no excitement. You can't substitute that thrill, of being
of winning that game.
Oh, it's second.
And everything that it means.
Yeah, and we've all been there. We've all, fortunately, we've had experience of it. So, but look, that was good news today that, there's going to be some spectators back. Obviously, I entered into a battle with the bedwetters and the couch lovers and the furlough check lovers, on Twitter, because obviously Boris has thrown out his crumbs as usual over your roadmap back to, normality until lockdown 4 comes in or whatever. So I watched the whole press conference and, obviously I think it's 4 months and, there's hints of this and hints of that. And we've got to watch the data and you listen to Valence and you listen to Chris Whitty. Chris Whitty's England's Dr. Doom, Dr. Fauci. I stopped listening to Dr. Fauci because he changes his mind more times than his underpants. Another fucking cretin. Do you know what I mean? That's been in power for 40 years. The problem with all these experts and science experts and data experts, nobody knew who they were last year. Time magazine weren't putting them on magazine covers. News agencies weren't paying them to do biopsy on them and kind of articles on them. And they know that as COVID's getting beaten, as it becomes a seasonal flu, which it will become, as the vaccine kicks in and everything else, they're going to become irrelevant, these people. And they're going to go back to anonymity, that no one's ever really fucking heard of them again. And that's why some of them are just desperate to talk about 2022 and still wearing masks and keeping it going and still doing their Sunday morning interviews. So I've got no patience for any of them. Dr. Doom and Co can go fuck themselves. The vaccine's working. It's obvious it's working. The science, finally, they keep saying to follow the science. But if you follow the science, it shouldn't take 4 months to open the country up. And the one thing I'll say to some of the people listening and who watch Boris's thing, whatever, what was really interesting to me today, because this is one of my skills I honed over the years, and we talked about it on the business podcast. I read people's body language, but I also read words. And both Whitty and Boris subliminally threw in, and not a lot of people picked up on this, they use words of COVID will be like flu season. In other words, down the line, you're still going to get your deaths, because obviously no such thing as COVID zero, unless you're those lunatics in New Zealand and Australia who want to buckle themselves away from the rest of the world. And basically come October, November, December, it will be like a flu season where we don't shut down for the flu. We don't wear masks for the flu. It's basically like flu season. And both Whitty and Boris Johnson said that twice. And that to me is very relevant because they like to change what they do when people have them on camera and people are listening and watching crumbs. They start dropping in their little things that get in your head. And you're going to see a lot more articles on that now. COVID will be finally like flu season. That will come from the newspapers. They get leaked shit from the government. It'll take a few months. And I'm hoping in a positive way that's great because that's what we need to get to.
Right.
All the bedwetters and couch lovers and furlough cash checkers, are going to be forced to open their front door Not that they ever left their houses anyway. So, hopefully there are a lot better times ahead for the UK public, that's for sure, because we're obviously living our best life out here in Florida.
It's funny, we had a Twitter exchange today about going and seeing live sports. So you were talking about going to watch volleyball this
It
weekend.
was brilliant, Phil. I was so impressed how they set it up. I walked in, obviously the kids go in one area, and in between games they go outside. They got to wear masks in, and then they take them off when they play. But for the spectators, they were up above. But when you went in, they had these machines you stuck your wrist in. They were automated machines.
Okay.
You put your wrist in, it was like, yeah, okay, or whatever temperature was, or it would beep out loud and send someone back outside. So there was no person standing by the machine. You didn't have to have something on your forehead. It was actually your wrist. And then the girl came over and said, right, your team's not going to be on for another 10 minutes. We'll allow you in when the other spectators from the other games have left. And it was just really, really well put together. Yeah. My wife obviously went to a tournament last week in Savannah. This weekend it was like in Orlando. It was kind of, where was it? It was down there, Kissimmee. And it was just great to see parents, kids, just normality, Phil. It's just lovely to see it. And hopefully people in the UK with their kids going back to school, they're going to get some of it. What they now have to accept, people in the UK, no more allowing what's happened happen again. No more letting them shut your kids off school. No more taking your businesses. If they try and push a lockdown 4 on you, the TV personalities and all the bedwetters want to come out and basically like push for that. You got to push back hard. It's time for the majority to use their voice again. The minority and the social media minority have been too prevalent and loud the last 6, 7, 8, 10 months.
Well, it's at least there's some positivity from today, and we'll
of course.
We'll see where it takes us. But you've been making friends and influencing people this week in all kinds of different dimensions. One of the things you did, I think, was talked on a Liverpool podcast.
I did.
And shared your views on what's going on at Liverpool. A reminder to everyone, of course, they lost to Everton, dare I say it, at the weekend. And not a bunch of happy campers.
No, I watched the game, still playing Henderson at the back. He's now injured now for 5, 6 games. The biggest criminal act from Jurgen, and I said this on the Liverpool podcast, is he should have bit the bullet and played 2 young centre-backs all the time, put Henderson and Fabinho back in midfield and just outscored the opposition. Because, with them in midfield, I'm convinced have done a lot better over the last 12 games. Even playing with 2 20-year-olds at the back, it doesn't matter. And what's happened instead is we've just gone on this horrible run. Confidence has just seeped out of them. And truth be known, I said it on the podcast, their front 3, Firmino's finished, in my opinion. He's at 30. He's a busted flush. The owners need to really, really back him, and I don't think they will. They need to go and bring in they probably need to spend 100, 150 million on 4, if not 5. Not world-class players, because Liverpool don't buy world-class. Right. They put that tier below and make them world-class. That's what they do. Van Dijk was a top centre-half at Southampton. He wasn't world-class. He's now world-class. Alisson, you could argue, was he world-class? Yes, he was highly rated. Turn him into world-class with titles. So that's what we do as a club. They're going to need to go out and do shopping. And if Fenway don't do it, if they don't make the Champions League this year, it's going to be an issue. But they've got to back Klopp no matter what. So, and I don't think they did before. And I think he's been very patient and silent and the stuff he's dealt with his mum. And it's not nice watching Liverpool, but I'm more empathetic now than ever before owning a club that's, had a lot of criticism, had issues. And I look at it and go, no, he needs a bit of time to rejig this, work his magic. And unfortunately, it's not going to happen quickly. So maybe by some miracle we win the Champions League. Maybe we'll have a run at the end of the season. I don't know, but you wouldn't bet them winning any game at the moment in the league. They're just shot of confidence. So that's football. That's what happens.
Now, do you see Jurgen as being like Mr. Liverpool, the latest incarnation of Mr. Liverpool? Or do you think if something else comes along and he's now in this kind of trough for 3 or 4 years or a rebuild, that he might walk?
I worry that he's the type of manager that mentally, if it gets too much for him and the criticism starts, right now he's not really getting criticised by Liverpool fans or Liverpool family or whatever. But I really feel that if it turns and he feels he's not going to get the backing support and the criticism gets too much, he'll go get the Germany job. Mm-hmm. He'll move on. And I think that's a mistake. Of course, everyone wants Stevie G eventually, but you'd like Stevie G to win 2 or 3 titles at Rangers and then be ready for when Jurgen moves on. And that's the perfect transition. So, I am concerned. The biggest concern for me would be losing Jurgen Klopp, yes. And I was never his biggest fan early on. But that would be my biggest concern right now for Liverpool, because players come and go. They can get recruited. But having that je ne sais quoi, that difference as a manager, is just, it's irreplaceable.
Yeah, and you end up going down the Arsenal route of hounding out your manager.
You do.
And thinking the grass is always greener on the other side.
Yeah, it's really, really difficult. Look, Premier League's exciting at the moment. It's forget about, like I'm talking about first place, Man City, stick their name in the trophy. But the top four race, the relegation battle with Fulham's form. Newcastle obviously have slid into oblivion there, and they've lost Callum Wilson. Yeah, that's going to be really, really interesting running. And then you go to, obviously, the Championship, and again, Brentford were on fire, now lost 3 in a row. I think I was out with an ankle injury. Watford are starting to show their teeth. Norwich look like they've got that title wrapped up. You've got Warnock working his magic at Middlesbrough just behind, who are now gate crashing into the playoffs. It's going to be a fascinating run in. Never mind talking about League One and the 12 different teams who win promotion from that. So, is League Two as exciting as the rest, or is it a foregone conclusion who's going to go up?
No, it's close. I mean, I don't have the table in front of me for the look at the points perspective, but you only need to look at us. I've gone from 17th, 18th up to 13th in the last 2 or 3 games.
Yeah,
it's really close. You have Cambridge at the top, who have maybe got a couple more points than I think Forest Green a second, but they've played 3 more. Yeah. So it's really close. I think all leagues, like you say, aside from Man City, I mean, they're going to walk the league. But you look across all the other divisions and it's tight.
Yeah. For me, Man City and Norwich will walk their respective leagues. Forest Green was one of my silent picks at the start of the season. Because again, like I've said before, I rate Mark Cooper.
Yeah.
The job he's done there has been, brilliant. So that's interesting anyway. So what else we got to talk about football-wise?
Yeah, so let's see. I want to come back to a couple of Peterborough things, but I want to you talked about Bournemouth and the playoffs in the Championship, and I wanted to talk about Thierry Henry and Johnny Woodgate. So, there was all the discussion around whether Thierry Henry was going to be brought in and whether they should go and look outside of the UK to bring a manager in.
So I did my 5 Live podcast that they had me on, pay me, to do it a couple of times a month, and a lot of money, of course, because I'll make the difference. In the
You're backing up the wrong tree here, I'm afraid.
Yeah, sorry. But yeah, so I'm on BBC 5 Live, and I do it with some good guys on there. I was on with Curtis Davis last week, Aaron, the presenter, and it came up because we interviewed Jason Tindall, nice fella, really good interview, and I basically said I was astonished they were looking at Thierry Henry. The guy's got like a 26% win record across jobs. He averaged a goal a game over 50-odd games at Monaco. It's not exactly exciting football. I've made the point, I know he could be deemed one of the best ever Premier League players, and he's an iconic player, but as a manager, I think he's rubbish. And I'm a data person, and the data backs that up, that he's rubbish. And it's not like he's only had 10 games in one job. He's had 2 jobs across a lot of games. So you start with a manager over 2 jobs and quite a few games, you can start getting an image of the type of football they like and what kind of manager they are. And for me, he's a failure. And I just said at the time, I don't know why he's in the reckoning for that job. Jason Tindall had a 42% win rate here when he was fired. And I'm not saying Jason was the man for the job.
Right.
But with me, if I were them, I'd walk over broken glass and beg Eddie Howe to come back for the end of the season. So, but then again, I like managers coming back 3 times to all clubs. So I just made that point that, I thought Henry is not a good manager. Same with Vieira. And it pisses me off, some of these top ex-players who keep getting opportunities. And the reason it pisses me off is because there are so many good managers in the lower leagues that just don't get that opportunity because they didn't play for a top club. They weren't an iconic football player. And
it's like name recognition. They seem as being a boring choice.
Yeah, and that's it, And I think there were a couple of comments. I know Adrian Durham's a good pal of mine. He's on TalkSport. And I know Simon and Jordan had done a thing on Henry that pretty much copied what I said. That's all right, Simon and me have similar views. And I think I'd seen a Twitter thread where Adrian said there was an agenda towards Thierry Henry. So, which I didn't dig into, but it kind of made me uncomfortable he's using the word agenda, because does that mean there was racism implied? Some of the comments about Thierry Henry, which to me is a load of bullshit. Makes no sense whatsoever. And, for me, the week before, I'm talking about Darragh Moore, one of the best managers outside the Premier League. And even though Toney have lost 4 or whatever else, he's still been one of the best managers in the last 20 months for what the job he's done. If you analyse what he's done at Doncaster with the lack of resources, he's phenomenal. So I'm not saying Adrian was having that go at me, by the way, or implying that I had an agenda. Maybe it was what Simon said or what other people were writing, but I think he's barking up the wrong tree. And I get, what he wants to say or do, and it's up to him. But no, wrong for me. Thierry Henry, for me, is just a shite manager. So far, that's not an agenda, that's fact.
It was interesting to see Jonathan Woodgate get the job. I know he's been interim.
He's not great either, by the way.
Right.
He's a terrible manager in Middlesbrough. Right.
And this is why I opened my eyes, because when we were looking for a manager, at that point, 89th in the Football League, and Johnny Woodgate's name gets mentioned, and our hearts are sinking like, oh, we don't want Jonathan Woodgate. We're bottom of League 2. doesn't strike me as being a particularly inspiring choice for.
Look, he's obviously gone in and he'd arrived before Tyndall was sacked, and they obviously gave him the jobs. There's no one else to take training probably when they got rid of all the previous. That happened. So look, no disrespect to Woodgate, but again, he's obviously a good coach, but I don't think he's a good manager. Now, if he wins promotion with Bournemouth, brilliant. I'm proven wrong. Maybe he could come again in his second stint. It might be perfect for him. For me, if you're Bournemouth and you're looking at it and going, okay, the one person out of work at the moment who I think would be a terrific appointment, even if you went to them and said, look, we just want you till the end of the season. We're going to give you X amount till the end of the season. We're going to give you £1 million bonus if you get us up. That would be Paul Cook.
Okay.
Job Paul Cook, everywhere he's been. Chesterfield, brilliant. Got him in the playoffs in League One. Obviously won promotion with Portsmouth. Obviously won promotion with Wigan. He was keeping Wigan in the Championship quite comfortably, bar what happened with the whole administration fiasco. He is probably the best unemployed football manager next to Eddie Howe out there out of work at the moment. So, I would have gone and thrown a kitchen sink at Cookie and said, come in, work with Woodgate, be the manager. Woodgate will be your first team coach. There's a few quid till the end of the season, and there's a big carrot there to get us up. Yeah. And if you get us up, we're going to give you a longer contract. So for me, that's a no-brainer. So that's somebody I would have looked at.
Would you think it's a no-brainer from his perspective? So you think from a manager perspective, you're waiting for the right job, jumping into a situation that could be over in 3 months and could look bad on you is another thing on your CV?
I don't think that would have affected Paul Cook's career whatsoever. Even if he'd gone in and they didn't do it, he could say, well, I was there for 3 months. They weren't my players. I was asked to steady the ship. They'd lost X amount of games. They had a little mini run under Woodgate at the start. Now they've just lost again. They haven't been on a good run. They haven't really got a 20-man goal scorer, which, I never thought the Liverpool guy was ever going to be. And that's always going to be a problem when you want to get promoted. So I don't think it would have affected Cookie. I just think that would have been a perfect job for him. And he's that type of guy that would have gone in and given them a lift. And I think it was a no-brainer. So I am surprised they didn't go out and do. But look, who might say or teach Bournemouth what to do? They've got promotion to the Premier League. I don't need to teach them how to suck eggs. They know what they're doing. So I'm sure whatever they do will work out. I'm just on here to give an opinion. And I know that pisses people off sometimes, but opinions are like arseholes. Everyone fucking has one.
Well, I want to come onto a couple of Peterborough pieces of news. And one is a sad piece of news of Bobby Copping and a young kid who had to retire due to a head injury.
This kid was so talented, had a real chance, was in our first team plans for this season. Started happening in pre-season. He headed a ball, got a bleed. He started getting dizzy, not feeling well. Came back from that, did it again. Very innocuous, wasn't a heavy header. Took medication to try and see if that would fix the problem. And then the advice was you can keep trying to find medicine to fix it, take the risk, or you give up football.
Yeah.
And he could have caused his death.
Yeah.
Now, fair play to the kid and his family. Horrible decision to 19 to have to take. And we obviously made a decision as a club. Look, Bobby, stay with us, work with us. Take a job. You have a future in football. It's not going to be as a player. Who knows? Maybe in a couple of years, if science changes something, it could be. You just don't know. Anything can happen. But you know what? Be around a football club. Be involved. We're going to come up with some things for you to do with the academy. A couple of other things to do with the club. And really happy about that. And hopefully gives him a lift as well.
Right.
You don't see any talented 19-year-old go out of football like that. Football clubs are like a family. So you got to look after people as best you can. And, I feel as a club, we've always done that.
Now, the other piece that I wanted to talk to was your goalkeeper challenge of everyone coming down with COVID.
So I got a phone call off Baz. It was Wednesday last week. He goes, Chairman, after the win last night, I got some fucking bad news for you. I hate those phone calls. He goes, 2 goalkeepers have got COVID. I'm like, you are fucking kidding me, Barry. And he goes, no, not Pimmy, the other 2 goalkeepers. I was like, for fuck's sake, why didn't you lead with that? Well, they were in proximity of people who had COVID or they have COVID. So I'm not quite sure which it is, but they had to isolate. So Baz automatically wanted to get, I think it was Luke Steele, a former legend of ours player that he sold to Man United, still lives in the area. I think he was signing for Swindon. So we reached out to Luke. We were nearly going to bring him in week to week or on a contract till the end of the season to provide a bit of cover. Luke's made a few quid, so he didn't need the money. But it turns out somehow he's played for a non-league club on one of the club, and FIFA deemed it he could sign for us, which is a fucking gutter for the guy.
Yeah.
Because he can't even sign for us or Swindon or whoever else was in for him. So, that's probably a bit of a news thing there for Swanee to splash all over the front pages he's never heard about. I've let out of the bag there. But hopefully after Saturday, we got Mark Tyler, the old man on the bench. That was my idea. I said to Baz, tell Tiles to dust off his boots, get his hamstrings ready. I think he shit himself when he got the phone call. You're going to be on the bench. So it was either that or we go to the Premier League and get an emergency loan. Touch wood, God willing, that doesn't happen again because that's horrendous. And that is the pitfalls of all the isolation rules and everything going on with COVID.
Yeah, you get Baz on the bench before you know it.
Absolutely.
Now, there was a story late last week about the government loaning money to the Championship.
Yes.
And a £100 million loan was going to be loaned to the Championship to actually help with some of the taxes that were due. And at the last minute, there being a clause that the government inserted suggesting, well, not suggesting, but requiring that anyone who took the loan couldn't offer increased deals to any of their players. Seems kind of crazy.
Changing deals from the authorities. Never.
The day before the money was going to get paid.
Yeah, but listen, those who have done deals with, these kind of people before, that's nothing new. I'm sure it'll get negotiated down. I'm sure there'll be something going on. I'm more concerned about where's our bailout from the government. I've seen again, Oliver Dowden was bragging the other day about other sports he's giving more money to. And again, my wife actually said to me yesterday, funny enough, she goes, why aren't you guys getting any government bailout money? Why aren't you getting any help when everyone else is? I said, because they fucking hate us. I don't know what it is. They all seem to think that League One and League Two clubs are like part of the Premier League. They honestly don't give a shit. It's why I have so much disdain for what they've done. They've stopped us earning a living for so long. And again, they're not helping. They're not offering any help. I don't think there's any discussions. I think it's on the EFL now to really start putting pressure on to get some sort of help. Because you don't trust them when they say you're going to have X amount of fans back for everything that's happened. So it's still really difficult. As we spoke with Ryan on the podcast the other day, it's really difficult to budget things based on like trust in the government. You know what I mean? So it's just a different story every week, isn't it?
Yeah, then meanwhile, the offer of help to National League North and South clubs and the National League Premier is loans, not grants.
Yeah, they got money before. I think they got 20 before. They get more money. But hey, offer us loans. We'd all love loans. We were speaking about loans before we came on the show. If it's a loan over 20 years or 30 years, look, I'm not kidding here. 70-80% of our income has been wiped out by draconian laws not allowing us to go and earn that money. And I get at the start why we had to do it, but we're all told to follow the science. I was trying to argue with fans earlier on. NFL teams here have had fans back for months. We went to the Super Bowl in Tampa. There's no super spreader. If those morons over there had just gone and studied other areas and other countries the way they did it, it was all possible to do outdoors. So there was never any science to back up them stopping us having fans outside. Do you know what I mean? It just suited the narrative in the full lockdown mode. But the point is, they're the ones who stopped us being able to earn money. And they've never offered an olive branch to help us. Oh, a few months of putting off paying our taxes, and then we had to fucking pay them after Christmas. Yeah, great, wonderful, thanks for the help. A little bit of furlough money. Yeah, brilliant, great. Our main cost is on footballers and that side of things. So we've not had the help we've needed. And like I said to you before, I still feel we're owed by the government big time.
We talked last week about salary cap, and it was kind of hot off the press. I just wondered, a week removed, if there's been any more thinking about the impact of that and if it's changing any conversations with players.
It's gone quiet. I mean, I can only go from my point of view that our policy won't change. We will make it very clear to players, agents from now on that, we're going to run a salary cap type system, particularly in the lower leagues. We're just going to do it for the right reasons. The one thing I will say it's done is, because it's been abolished and we've reverted back to the previous SMCP or whatever it's called, the Salary Management Protocol, whatever, we're now all of us embargoed. Every club is basically in breach of that. We would have also had an issue trying to sign that.
Because you got zero revenue.
Because you're allowed to spend 60% of your revenue, not TV money. There is no other fucking revenue. Every single club is now, and I haven't seen anything from the EFL giving us a free year on that or whatever else, but yeah, basically we're all pretty much embargoed because
hopefully they don't notice.
Do you know what, pal? It's like a fucking movie script. You couldn't write this shit. Do you know what I mean? The way something's gone on, and I saw non-league voted to stop playing, bar I think the Premier.
Yeah, it's North and South voted to stop and to actually void the season.
I feel so bad for all those clubs, all those people. I feel bad for everyone who's had to endure this while the bedwetters call them out. You know what I mean? For wanting to go back to work. I really do. It's so disheartening to see. And all I can say to you is I really, really feel, and I've been pretty right in a lot of things, that it's as we go forward months this year and days, forget about your Dr. Doom, Fauci and Valley and all these people, the science and the data with the vaccines and having studied it and whatever else is going to make it impossible for these wankers to keep you locked up. Impossible.
So my last question is kind of related to, We've talked about planning and the fact you can't plan, particularly for next season. We have the salary cap that's now gone away at the same time. Like, when do you start having conversations with players about that are out of contract at the end of the season that, things might not be looking so good for them?
That's really funny because Barry rang me about 2 days ago about a couple of players that are coming up to that situation. Their agents have been on and stuff. And I said, look, we can't have those discussions until April, May.
Mm-hmm.
It'd be really, really irresponsible to be giving out contracts to players out of contract right now. We don't know where we're going to be. We don't know if we're going to have fans. I think we will. There are important things we have to know.
Right.
We think there's good guidance that by August it's going to be pretty much normality of full fans and everything else. But we just don't know in the economic landscape, do people have enough money to buy season tickets and merchandise?
Mm-hmm.
Will there be that appetite and built up? And so to be giving out contracts right now, it's really, really difficult. So I want to have those conversations. I've already got on my list of things to do. To have those conversations in April, May time is the right time to have those conversations, in my opinion.
And you feel it's going to be the same up and down the country?
I can't speak for everyone else, but I would imagine, unless players are going, happy to sign a new contract on 35% less money, I don't think there'd be a rush.
They'd rather wait and see.
Yeah, I don't think there'd be a rush on clubs, like handing out new contracts at the moment. So, yes, we've looked after younger players, but you're talking about hundreds of pounds a week, not that. It's a different conversation.
And you need those players locked up under contract.
Yeah, it's different, So look, I sympathise with some of the players who are like coming to the end of their contract and they're worried. But all I can say to them is get a promotion on your CV,
mm-hmm.
And that's going to help. And do your best, and you're in the window. Yeah. And of course, a lot of them are going to want to sign up.
Right.
So but again, it would be remiss of me to do a deal now when I don't know what league we're going to be in and I don't know what the financial landscape's going to be. So many unanswered questions, Phil. So it's really difficult to navigate, but I'm hoping April, May to come up with a plan, a formula, and then start knocking out deals like that when I need to.
All right, well, we're going to go into, we've got a bunch of questions from listeners, so we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll come back in a moment with some questions.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the pod. We have a bunch of listener questions that I'm going to go through today. The first one is from Gordon, who's in Melbourne.
Before we get to Gordon, a quick little thing for our fans to know.
Yeah.
And it's really important. Obviously, the business pod episode 1's been recorded. Next week, we're not doing the football pod because I'm traveling this weekend for a short space. So what will be on the stream, released as an episode, will be the first business pod as a free to everybody. For those of you who want to subscribe then after listening to the wonderful podcast and learning some great business tips on it, you can subscribe at hardtruthbusiness.com, I believe is the website.
Yep, that's the one.
You can go on and subscribe. Phil's built a brilliant community-based podcast. You're going to have to pay a fee to subscribe, but there's a lot more than just a business podcast on there. You'll be able to get all the info if you leave your email details on the hardtruthbusiness.com. The other thing we're looking for is advertisers. For this podcast, we're looking for an advertiser for this one. We're reaching 300,000 listeners, which is pretty incredible after a year of a new podcast. So, yes, a lot of football fans listen. But if you're looking to sell a product to football fans, contact Phil at?
That's at contact@hardtruthfootball.com.
There you go. And next week, you're going to enjoy the first business pod. It's about everything. And we've obviously talked about it before, but I'll leave it now. We won't go into it and we'll get on to the listeners' questions. Yeah,
just a teaser for what that topic is. And thanks for bringing this up before I went into the questions. We talked about hitting rock bottom.
Yep.
And we started there. We'll talk a little bit more next week when we drop the pod, but we talked about it because I think you got to have your eyes open about the worst that can happen before you can really embrace the good that can happen.
And that's the title of the episode for the first episode of the Hard Truth Business pod that we're doing. It is hitting rock bottom, and it's happened to all of us. So it's, for those of you out there who resonate with those words or whatever else, definitely listen to the podcast.
All right, let's go into these questions then, and I won't keep Gordon waiting any longer. So Gordon in Melbourne, and he talks about Ivan Toney, and we've got a few questions about Ivan Toney as more and more people are kind of sitting up and taking notice of him. Gordon referenced an article in the Mirror about Leicester expressing interest in Ivan as a long-term replacement for Jamie Vardy. Gordon asks, did Leicester express any interest at all about Ivan in the summer?
No, and comparing him to Jamie Vardy, I mean, Leicester would have to change the way they play. They're very different players. Ivan's a top quality player. Look, I've already advocated on my Liverpool podcast this week. Liverpool, if they think Origi's a good player, help us with 8 goals in 60 games or whatever over 6 years. But Ivan Toney, Ollie Watkins would have been a great signing for Liverpool. one of their front three backups. Ivan Toney would be the same. Any club in the Premier League, even top clubs, should be looking to buy Ivan Toney.
Right.
Because when you see what's happening at the moment, the quality, and when you look at most teams, 2 or 3 players that play up front, it's the lack of quality coming off the bench or in competition with them. Ivan Toney's of that age. He's got that quality. He could step up and score 15 goals in the Premier League in the season with his own. And it's the physicality he brings. Leicester weren't one of the clubs. Barry ran quite a few clubs in the Premier League. In fact, tell a quick story today. David Sullivan, the West Ham owner, rang Baz today. Baz rang me laughing and said, I fucking wish I listened to you in the summer. Because David Moyes did like Ivan Toney a lot. And, obviously they were very worried about him stepping up from League One. And he said, Baz, that boy's going to go for probably 30 plus million in the summer. And the West Ham have done brilliant this season. So I don't have any regrets at all. But Baz rang, I could name so many clubs he rang, but they just had no interest because of the League One thing. But obviously, they were the ones I've mentioned that did have an interest but didn't have the money. So Leicester never came into it. Surprised me a little bit because a lot of the recruitment people coming to our games, we had Josh Knight last year. We had quite a few of their people at games watching them, and I was unplayable. So, look, if they end up having to spend 35 million, I guess somebody there deserves the sack, right, in scouting.
Well, I mean, it shows do you think there's ever going to be a player who's going to, and ever is probably going too far because who knows what's really going to happen, but that League One to the Premiership is just too much of a jump for most clubs to take a risk on.
Because if Jamie Vardy's shown anyone in football, he went from non-league to the Championship for £1 million, then he stepped up to the Premier League and came alive, and he's a Premier League legend. If you look at his record against the big clubs, and he's got a Premier League title on his mantelpiece, what he's done for Leicester, Jamie Vardy is Leicester. And if that's not an advertisement for lower league talent losing the snobbery level, I don't know what fucking is.
Right.
So the idea that a Premier League club would see spending 10 million on a League One striker, as a risk is fucking ridiculous to me. Yeah. Because when you're spending 40 million on Joe Linton, like Newcastle have, who couldn't score in a brothel, do you know what I mean? With a bag full of money, with all due respect. How could spending 10 million on a League One player be a risk? It's not a risk. And if you call spending 10 million a risk, you're in the wrong business, because it's the equivalent of Peterborough spending a few $100,000 on a non-league player.
Yeah, it's fighting money down the sofa.
Risk versus reward.
Yeah.
That's what football can be sometimes.
But you're pretty unusual in the fact you'll go and spend that money in non-league where most don't. But you have the system that gives you the confidence to go and do that.
We have the balls. Yeah. And we have the balls, and you need the balls. And I think a lot of people lost their balls in the pandemic, fair enough. A lot of us did. A lot of people did. And you have to have the balls. And some of these clubs get snobby about lower league and they don't have the balls. And sometimes recruitment people have to scream loudly and go, you're missing out here.
Yeah.
That player's nailed on to be a player in the Premier League.
Now, the question that's kind of a follow-up, and it comes from Aidan. Aidan talks about Ivan Toney in England kind of in the same breath. And there's, I guess, a couple of questions to it. The first is, is Ivan Toney England quality, or do you see him being England quality?
If Callum Wilson's England quality, then Ivan Toney is, yeah. And Callum Wilson's done brilliant in the Premier League. But he's never been prolific. He's always had your 12, 14 goals a season. And I think fitness has been a big issue with that. But Ivan Toney has the physical traits to do well in the Premier League. If he went up and he scored 15 goals in season one, you could put money on him and be called up England all day long. Has he got the quality? I don't watch enough international football. I've seen quite a bit of it, but not enough of it. But if I was to take a guess, yes.
And kind of the follow-up, which may be related to the same question about the step up from League One to the Premier League, for example, is why does the Championship get overlooked for players, young England players, not being picked for the England team and they're having to make an impact in the Premier League first?
I think competition is just at the moment incredible. England have got a real dearth of young talent throughout. And, if you had to pick a number 10 for the England team right now, it would give you a headache. There's so many of them. I think it's a golden era for the England team. So to suddenly then go down below, and like, for example, number 10's Brooks at Bournemouth, terrific young player. Todd Cantwell at Norwich. Could they play for their country? Yes. Could they get in now ahead of Barnes, ahead of Mason Mount, ahead of who's the Greenwood, ahead of Phil Foden? They're not going to get in ahead of them at the moment. So what helps, obviously, is playing in the Premier League. So it's really, really difficult. A
question from Aaron, who's a Palace fan also in Australia. His first question he asks about, you being overseas in the States, how does that impact being able to run a football club when you're overseas?
It doesn't really, I everything nowadays, I guess in the era of COVID, Zoom's, so relevant, isn't it? And not
Mhm.
that I like it, but so much of my day is phone calls anyway. And even when I'm in the UK, I'm not always at the club. I'm on
Mhm.
phone. So I go over at key moments. I'm always there in the summer for when we need to recruit. I'm always there in January before Christmas when we need to recruit. I watch probably more than 55% of the games in person. So I am very relevant. I'm there. I'm focused. People know where I am and they need me. Same with my partners. They'll travel when they can. It should be more tougher, but it's not.
And another question, again from a Palace perspective, he just wondered if you could shed some light on what happened in the prospective deal with George Boyd all those years ago that I think never really happened. Was there a deal for George Boyd to go to Palace?
I remember Steve Parrish called me out on Twitter about it. I know he got angry with me on Twitter. I was away in the Bahamas on holiday when we did the deal. And I want to say there was a deal done and then there wasn't a deal done. I don't know. I know Palace wanted him. I know
Hmm.
Ian Holloway wanted him at the time he was the manager. And then he ended up going to Hull after the Forest thing. So, but yeah, there was, and for Boydie, he's a Palace fan. So that would have been like a dream come true
Yeah.
for him. Oh, he wanted to go there.
I got a couple of questions from Adrian, who's a Plymouth fan.
Sure.
First of all, and you talked a little bit about this last week when we were talking about young managers, but he said that he saw you on the BBC podcast with Ryan Lowe a couple of weeks ago, Plymouth manager. Just wanted to get your perspective on Ryan as manager, and just generally what you think about it, and how far can he take Argyle?
Great guy. Really enjoy you spending time with him. I've always rated him. Thought he's done brilliant. Where he was before. He was, Bury before, and the circumstances surrounding that. I love seeing ex-players go into management and do so well. Won promotions already at a young age. I really rate him because when they had a struggle early in the season and they were getting smashed in a few games, I watch all managers' interviews. I thought he handled it magnificently, and that's a sign of a good manager. He's a Scouser as well, I think, and I have a soft spot for Scousers, obviously being a Liverpool fan. I think he could take Plymouth as far as he wants. It depends. I don't know the owners personally, but that is again another Bradford.
Right.
And I don't want to insult Bradford there, but
Mhm.
it's a big club in my opinion,
Yeah.
Plymouth. You go to the stadium, you see the facilities. They've got a new owner. They've got a fan base that's big. When I bought Peterborough, and we were bottom of League Two. I always remember Plymouth were like top 14 in the Championship.
Mhm.
He could take them as far as they want him to take him. I think the thing will be eventually is can they match his ambitions?
Yeah.
Because he appears to be the type of guy, in my opinion, that won't want to be at a club that doesn't want to be promoted or
Yeah.
doesn't want to keep going. And that's not a slight on Plymouth because of the pandemic and everything else. But Ryan Lowe is going to want to be at a club that backs him. He's going to, and look, Plymouth have backed him and they
Mhm.
did this with us in the summer. So I think it's a good relationship and they've got a good new owner there. And for as long as they can keep him, they're going to do very well.
Now, my follow up is just I'd love to know some of your thoughts on Luke Jeffcott. It seems like there's hardly a week that goes by
Sure.
without seeing him on the score sheet.
Yeah, hopefully, another week goes by without seeing him on the
I
score sheet.
know.
Yeah, one of League One's outstanding young talents. I'd seen him last year in League Two, watched him a couple of times. Has moved up another level, not
Mhm.
just league. I mean in play,
Yeah.
in mentality, everything. Has it all. Could play higher. A nice asset for Plymouth. So if they need to, they can cash in. I've always spoken about League One clubs needing to have one good asset every year for cash flow reasons. And a lot of credit would go down to Lowe and his coaches and the work they've done with him, the improvement he's taken in the last 18 months. So it's between him, Wyke, and Johnson Clark Harris for the Golden Boot.
Yeah.
So that's an exciting race. Do you know what I mean? In the League One kind of goal stakes. But yeah, so let's hope he has a quiet week.
It's interesting for me to see Charlie Wyke banging them in. We signed him from Carlisle a few years ago, and actually he looked really good. We were really disappointed when he moved on, but that was kind of part of the plan, was bring him in relatively low cost. We made some money. It seemed like it was a tough start for Charlie Wyke at Sunderland, but this year he's really been he's been doing well, and I think he got 4 in the game a week or so ago.
He's always been a terrific player, and I can tell you another story about Wyke and us and whatever else under the Steve Evans era. But he's always been a good. It's the fitness. If
Yeah.
they keep him fit, he's a top tier League One striker. And I think this season he's been fit.
Mhm.
And they got obviously McGeady back in the team, and he thrives on service. If you don't get service into Charlie Wyke, it's a waste of time having him in
Yeah.
your team.
He's going to stand around the box waiting for it, but when you do, he's
Right.
clinical.
And he is clinical and dangerous. And when he's
Yeah.
in front, he's dangerous. And you're seeing that now. You're seeing he was a good acquisition by Sunderland. It just took a little while to get here.
Mhm.
And, again, he's another one. I hope he has a quiet few weeks.
Now, the last question is from Rob, and it's with reference to the Chelsea game at the weekend where Hudson-Odoi was subbed on and then subbed off.
Yep.
First of all, I've got a question, but I want to ask Rob's first. What are your thoughts on a substitute being substituted?
It's a tough one, because you can lose a player very quickly when you do that. And I know Duncan Ferguson did it a couple of years ago with Moses Keane.
Mm-hmm.
He's now killing it for PSG, scoring loads of goals. And obviously it was on Sky and I watched it. It was quite cringeworthy to watch the whole thing. So, look, I'm not a manager. It's down to the manager to do what he feels is the right thing to do. If the Chelsea manager thought it was the right thing to do to try and go win the game, I guess he did what was right. And it depends on his... I guess we'll see what the response is. Hudson-Odoi is a very talented player. The criticism would be he's too inconsistent.
Yeah.
Hot and cold. So does subbing him like that make him less hot and cold and more hot? I guess time will tell.
Mm-hmm.
It's happened to some very good players, I'd imagine, over the years. This is football. Sometimes players can be too much of a sensitive Jesse over stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to see a response. So nobody likes to see it happen. But at the end of the day, you're not breaking any laws of football manager, changing the sub.
And to me, it's not really a question, but more of a comment I'm surprised we don't see it more often, because subs are brought on to change games. And if they're not changing a game, then, have they done what they were brought on to do? But it's almost like we just leave them. If they didn't change a game, well, we'll leave it and we'll try and change somebody else instead.
I agree with you 100%. And now that we have like 5 subs in League One and League Two, you would have thought that's actually been a regular thing. If someone came on at half time and 20 minutes in, they're a bag of shit.
Yeah, it's not working.
And we've all seen some like horrific substitute appearances by players. Do you know what I mean? So who knows? We might see it before the end of the season. But I think, again, like storm a teacup.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for today's show. I want to thank everybody for listening. As we talked about just as we came back from the break, you're traveling next week, so we're not going to have a football pod, but we're going to play the business pod. There'll be all details about how to engage with the business community as you listen to that podcast. But as we said before, you could always go to hardtruthbusiness.com. Right now, that's just got a sign up form, but when we launch the pod next week, it's going to have a way to subscribe.
This advice you're going to get from this business pod will be invaluable. If you're coming out of lockdown, you're looking to relaunch your business, open your business, shut your business through legal liquidation, you're looking to get a better job, if you're looking to get promoted, you're looking to think about becoming an entrepreneur, you're looking to improve your life. Trust me when I say this, and it's easy for a sales guy to say, trust me when I say this, but, I'm not going to be making a lot of money out of this. Do you know what I mean? We're charging a sub fee because of the production crew involved in doing it. But the different advantages, the perks that we're giving out, the access you're going to have, you're going to have access to obviously the pods themselves every week. We're going to be having Zoom calls. You're going to have access to pitch for finance funding. This is going to be worth your time and money. Listen to the first episode for free next week and sign up at hardtruthbusiness.com.
Yep. And of course, any football questions, keep them coming. Contact at hardtruthfootball.com. Those all come directly to me. So one last time, thanks a lot, Darragh. Thanks everyone for listening. And we'll see you next week with the business pod and 2 weeks with another football pod.
Take care, all.